I moved into my bathroom because I know that once I start like really talking in my bedroom, the birds are gonna get really loud. So I moved in here. I already know that I'm not alone in this, what I'm about to talk about, and I'm sure that a lot of you have told me several times that you can relate and stuff, but I kind of just need to hear it again. So if any of you have experience with this, which I know probably most of you do, can you open a conversation in the comments, and not just for me, but for each other and everybody who has to go through this such frustrating problem, which is that sometimes you just stop and you realize like that you kind of just realize that mental illness sucks. The older I get, the more I'm recognizing in parts of my mental illness that I've always kind of been told that I had, but never really started feeling it until a couple years ago. What I'm talking about is really, really extreme highs and really extreme lows. I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and I had a therapist tell me a long time ago, before I was diagnosed with BPD, that she thought I could be bipolar because it runs in my family. My dad is bipolar. I've got siblings who are bipolar. Generations in my family, all of my dad's family. But then I was like really evaluated by a psychiatrist, not just a psychologist, but a psychiatrist. And she told me that I have BPD. And since then, I've been really, I guess, kind of afraid to learn a lot about it. But the older I get and the more traumatized I'm getting recently, the more I'm seeing how I can see, like, people will tell me, okay, this is a symptom of BPD, or this is a symptom of bipolar, and people tell me these things about BPD. And when I was very first diagnosed, I was like, okay, maybe that happens sometimes, but like, I don't remember it being something that consumed my life or that controlled my life, I guess. But the last maybe year, I guess, I'm seeing it so strong, and it's really frustrating because I get in this like beautiful, wonderful, motivated, happy, driven, just I believe in myself type of feelings, and then the next day I wake up wanting to be dead, and like, what is my worth in life? I just hate, I'm noticing recently the extreme highs and the extreme lows. I think I've always been kind of afraid to talk about, or to admit it, I guess, to myself, because my abuser has bipolar, and the more I learn about BPD, I think he had that as well. My thing is that the voices in my head keep telling me, because your abuser has this, and looking back on my childhood and seeing like there were periods of extreme highs and extreme lows. With him, it was more bipolar, because what I have learned is the difference is that BPD and bipolar symptom, you can have a very similar symptom, which is extreme highs and extreme lows. However, usually, as far as I understand, I'm not a doctor, don't get mad at me if I get this wrong, this is what I've been told, and what I understand is that bipolar, it's more like they have a season, where there's a high and then they crash for a couple months, and then they have a high again for a couple months and then crash for a couple months. Whereas BPD, that particular symptom kind of happens all day. Like during the day, it'll go like this, or every other day, it'll go like this. Instead of like months at a time, it'll be like a day at a time or less, is one of the symptoms that I've been told. And I hate the thought of right now okay, I've calmed down a little bit. Let me try this again. I hate the fact that I don't want this to sound like I'm trivializing anybody else's abuse out there and or anything like that. Like please don't. I'm not trying to say that mine is worse or better or easier or harder than your trauma. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. So just let me get out what I'm trying to say, which is that sometimes I find myself, sometimes I get really angry that like, why did my abuser have to be my own flesh and blood? Like, why am I his blood? I have his blood in me. Not only can I not have kids because I've destroyed my body, my eating disorder, I have severe endometriosis. I'm also like, I don't think I would because I wouldn't want to pass on any of that blood. And that's like the most horrible thing to say. I really don't mean this offensive, but sometimes I look at other people, friends, and be like, you're so lucky, I guess, that it wasn't your own blood. Like, your abuser can't pass any of who your abuser is onto you. Like, literally, that can't be helped with me. And again, all abuse sucks. All rape and molestation and physical abuse and mental abuse and emotional abuse and spiritual abuse, all of the abuse, nobody deserves it, and nothing is worse and nothing is better, and abuse is abuse. But I do find myself having those thoughts sometimes, like, why did it have to be someone that I have half of their blood? And I know that so many of you relate to this, but I need to hear it again because I feel like a bitch, to be honest. I kind of feel like there are people who are raped every day, all day, by somebody who's not a family member, and I could never do that. I couldn't handle it. And then I've got people that tell me that they couldn't handle if their own flesh and blood did horrible things to them. It's just crazy because I think the one similarity is that a lot of us tend to oh my gosh, they're so winning. Oh, us. Okay, hold on, I'm having an epiphany. That's what we have in common, is that so many of us turn that into being angry at ourselves somehow, when it's always about the abuser. It never has anything to do with us. Absolutely nothing that has happened to us was our fault. And yet, some of us are so manipulated by our abusers that we go the rest of our lives focusing on how much it damaged us. And for me, right now, I'm hyper focused on that because of this process that I'm going through with these repressed memories. And sorry, I need to blow my nose. Hold on. For some of us, our abusers aren't in our lives anymore, like for me. And yet, he's controlling it still. But it's like, I'm letting him, you know? I'm really excited to talk to my therapist about this. This will probably actually be one of the first things I talk to her about, just because I'm curious what her feedback would be about this, about abusers still having control over you even if they're not abusing you currently. Because that's just it's so shitty and so unfair that it's like, I remember the day that my abuser was essentially cut out of the family, I guess, or the day that we got away or whatever. It's like I remember that day, and even though I didn't have all of my memories yet, I had enough that I felt so relieved and so happy, and I just felt like I could breathe again and that I didn't have to worry anymore about him hurting my closest loved ones, let alone myself, but more so, I've always cared about others' well-beings more than mine. And yet, it's 20, how old am I? 24 years later. And I'm still letting it affect me, so. But I also shouldn't say that because I don't want to shame myself, because I know that these are feelings that need to come out and that I need to feel, but I also know that I'm just excited to tell my therapist about this and see what she thinks would help with this particular thing, because it's like I'm having a really hard time, and I have been probably my whole life, I think, separating once something is out of my life, letting it go. But sometimes when the pain is so deep, it's hard to let go. And then sometimes you get older and you get new painful, infuriating memories come, and then it destroys you. Like it just happened yesterday, but it didn't. Anyway, my mental health diagnoses, depression, anxiety, borderline, are very noticeable to me right now. And I'm already having a hard enough time lately because, maybe I shouldn't talk about this now. My body dysmorphia is really bad right now, especially for my face. Except I don't think it's body dysmorphia. Danny thinks it might be, but what I'm talking about is that there are days where my face is swollen, either from just being sick and hurting all over, or it's from a medication, or it's from throwing up, or it's from being constipated and pushing too hard and making my face puffy, or it's just from a lot of crying I get puffy. And on those days, like today's one of those days, I feel like I look like a marshmallow, and I feel like I look like my abuser today. And so like to physically see him in me, and then to also have a day where you just hate that you also have this chemical imbalance. that he has too. So it's not just physical, it's just one of those days.